Welcome to Accelerated Velocity, the podcast that helps you move faster, smarter, and more strategically in the rapidly evolving world of AI. We'll break down the latest AI news and innovations and explore how they impact your marketing, sales, and business growth. We'll dive into practical use cases, unpack new tools, and cut through the noise so you and your team can adapt with confidence. I'm Grace Matthews, Director of Content at Inbound AV, a business development agency and HubSpot solutions partner dedicated to driving sustainable business growth. Each week, I'll be here with Peter Malik, our CEO and founder. Join us as we make sense of what's changing and what to do about it. Hello, Accelerated Velocity listeners. Welcome to another episode. This is Grace, and I'm here with Peter.
Hey, Grace. I hear you have some interesting framework to discuss with us today.
Yeah, so I know we talk about AI search all the time. We have more AI search updates, and that's because they're really important. I think it's important for our listeners to take these into account. So we're just going to touch on a couple of the latest changes that have come out in the past couple weeks and how you can respond to them. I'll start with the fact that as of last week, Instagram posts will now be indexed by Google. This applies to public professional accounts specifically. Instagram in some capacities was already showing up on Google. You would see people's Instagram handles when you searched a name and things like that. But this is a whole new caliber and it has its own implications. So this is really important to respond to with your content strategy.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. And obviously, if in fact you're posting on Instagram and Google is picking that up as a source, that's a huge thing. And, like for instance, here at Inbound AV, we have a marketing agency. We're tech focused, and we've never really thought about Instagram being that valuable to us. But this really requires us to take a fresh look at it, because in a world that Instagram seems to be more and more ascendant, it's becoming more and more ubiquitous. And so it could be an interesting place for more B2B businesses to play in. And I can't really say what the results are going to be, but nevertheless, it's definitely worth it for us to look at and probably worth it for your business to look at. Really potentially changes a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to consider in terms of content strategy is that this now means that your reel or your carousel post or whatever it is that you're posting on Instagram could actually be showing up in Google search results now. So that means that you want to think about the search intent of your audience when you're writing your Instagram captions, even in the alt text of your videos and images, if you're using some sort of scheduling app that allows that, and the file names, all those detailed things that have always been important. But at this point, if you maybe haven't been focusing on Instagram strategy quite as much, or it didn't make as much sense to your business model before, it might be time to reassess that. If you've already been posting on Instagram consistently and you have a big following, it might also be time to assess the strategy of the copy that you're using, because maybe you're optimizing posts to the Instagram algorithm and that's not quite aligned with the Google search algorithm. It all gets really complicated and it really depends on what makes the most sense for your audience.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. It definitely, for everybody who is posting or isn't posting on Instagram, this presents some level of opportunity. And to your point, if you're playing to Google too, then it requires some more thought as to exactly what the content is. And I think that you have something to talk about ChatGPT and Google. And so this conversation of Google indexing these sort of really plays into that. Do you want to run it down?
Yeah, so the other update that I wanted to touch on today is the fact that ChatGPT is showing evidence of starting to use Google Snippets in its answers for its search results. And I took a look at a test which was run by an SEO specialist named Aleyda Solis, and she basically did meticulous testing to kind of go between Bing snippets and Google snippets and see how her content was showing up in ChatGPT based on how she was structuring it. And she gets into a lot of amazing technical details that are worth checking out if you're interested in. Probably I'm not going to do those justice. So I'll get to the bigger picture of it, which is that there's a really important trend to keep tabs on, that ChatGPT seems to be leaning towards getting its information from Google. And it's likely that this has been happening for a while now, but ChatGPT is a black box, so we can't really be sure how that's impacting your visibility or your search results on ChatGPT, without these sort of technical nitty-gritty tests and incremental testing. Now, what it does mean in terms of responding to this information and what you might want to be doing right now is thinking about the way that your content that might be posted in one place is surfacing on multiple platforms, which, I think this is a common theme that we're seeing, with Instagram, with other social media platforms, with all these LLMs.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too soon to tell, but I will say, to bring this full circle, if in fact Google is indexing Instagram posts, then by extension, are Instagram post results going to be showing up in ChatGPT? I don't know the answer to that, but it'll be really interesting to see if it is and how that changes the perception of AEO. It's kind of has infinite possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really pushing things more towards that idea of search everywhere, not traditional SEO optimization, but thinking about how all of your content is connected in this web. I mentioned other social media platforms. I think some prominent ones are, if you're in B2B LinkedIn posts, those are indexed by Google. So a solid LinkedIn article or a newsletter, or even a post that performs really well that has good information in it might show up in AI overviews, in different LLM results, at the top of search results. I've also been seeing for certain types of search intent, getting YouTube videos back in AI overviews on Google and at the top of the results. How-to videos, product reviews, things like that. So depending on the services or the products that you're providing, you want to really think about what platforms to target and then how they're kind of all interconnecting and how to develop your content strategy and your SEO strategy and your AEO strategy accordingly.
I just thought of this, by the way, and I signed up months ago. Perplexity announced the first AI web browser, Comet, and I've been waiting, and not very impatiently, because I sort of forgot about it, but I got accepted to class over the weekend, and I installed it, and it's interesting. I don't think it's a game changer like many first iterations of an AI first product. I don't think it does everything it can do. But it's a fascinating platform, and my guess is that you probably, if you sign up, you can get access to it immediately. So I'd go over, if you're not on the waiting list already, I'd go over to Perplexity and sign up for the list and check out Comet.
So, Peter, kind of like gathering all of these thoughts together and all these different discovery platforms, I have a question for you I'd love to get your input on. Does all of these platforms becoming more interconnected mean less work in terms of maintaining your search visibility?
Well, I think the elephant in the room around that subject is this concept of zero click, and we've discussed it before, but AI search results are more and more tailored to deliver everything that a user needs without ever going off the LLM or the web page, whichever product you're using. And so what does that mean? It means that it's much, much harder to get people to click through to your site. Now, is that trend going to continue? I think so. And if it is, you're still faced with being one of those top sources of information about a user's question. So I'm not sure it's going to make things easier. And in fact, it could make things harder in a lot of ways. I mean, I think the stat I saw most recently is that the LLMs are capturing like 80% of news questions where they get the answer they want. They don't have to go to the news channel or the news website or anything like that. That's a huge, huge, huge shift, because that could equal a year from now, what news sites are going to be able to survive? if they're getting 20% of the traffic that they're getting now? There's some big, big questions that no one has the answers to. And as we've explored in this podcast before, for every action, there is a reaction, and it's real quite often that reaction is an unexpected reaction that impacts the action in the first place. And that may be kind of a long-winded explanation, but I think that's reality. All we can do is keep testing, to stay on top of this, to be proactive in any way we can, to make sure that our content, that our business, that our website is remaining visible and is working for us, because I think a lot of these trends have the potential of harming small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. So it's a big, big subject, and it's something we should all pay attention to. As far as the end results, I don't know, but I do know that we need to keep up on these things we've just been discussing, simply because if the game has changed as far as us getting business to our website, then we need to know how we can stay on top of that.
Absolutely. And if you're not an SEO expert, that doesn't mean that you can't be involved in that sort of strategy for your organization. Of course, there are SEO platforms that can give you a better view of what's going on, both for AI search and for traditional SEO. There are specialists out there that do this work, but it doesn't mean that you can't do your own testing and play around incrementally with what content is serving your visibility and what structure is serving your visibility. All right, so I feel like we covered a lot, Peter. I don't want to go too far off the deep end with this topic because it's just always changing, and we'll keep checking in with updates as they arise. Should we hit the road?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks for your time today, Peter. We'll check in again next week.
Thanks, Grace. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Accelerated Velocity. A link to our website, newsletter, and all that other good stuff can be found down in the show notes. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a 5-star review, and make sure to subscribe for weekly episodes on the latest in AI for business.